Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. Manager reprimanded me because I was late. I stopped doing all the extra work. The second story. Church school lost a valuable worker, decided to change the policy of the school and ask me to return. The third story. Company refused to give me a phone, so I was wasting my time on the way to the office. The first story is, you can't be late anymore. You're to work only your set schedule. Okay, you're the boss. So after I graduated college, I went back to work at my high school job at a large auto parts chain. I have a few stories of malicious compliance from there because it was a miserable place to work with miserable management, but I think this one takes the cake. I lived about 15 minutes from the store and would routinely work 1 to 2 hours past my shift to help the manager close up and tally cash sale receipts. We were mainly wholesale, so the cash receipts were a small portion of the sales and had to be tallied by hand, as well as take out the trash, prep and stage the first deliveries for the next morning, as well as sweep the storefront. I didn't mind doing these things because I got a little OT out of it, got in the good graces of the manager, or so I thought. And being that, even though my drive home was short, staying a little late and letting traffic die down was fine with me. One morning I walked in about 9:07 when my shift was scheduled to start at 9 a.m. I didn't see what the big issue was since I had been staying late every day for months, helping him close the store, but he apparently took issue with it that day, which would have been fine if he had said something along the lines of, "Hey, liability Landon, you're late, and I know you worked long yesterday, but let's still get here on time." But that isn't what he said. He flew off the handle and went on about needing to work my schedule, and we have schedules for a reason, and you just need to be at work for the schedule that I made you. Well, needless to say, since I had been staying late for months to help him close the store, it's against policy to not have 2+ people in the store at a time, despite it not being on my schedule. This rubbed me the wrong way, so I convinced myself that instead of causing a scene and yelling, I would just do exactly what he said. So 5:30 rolls around. We closed at 6, and I stood in front of the computer until it hit 5:30 exactly, clocked out and started walking towards the door. Manager, where are you going? Me, home. Manager, what? Why? Who's gonna help me close the store tonight? Me, I don't know, but you made it very clear I was to work my schedule. So I get off at 5:30. It's now 5:30 and I'm going home. And I walked out. The next morning I got there at 8:55 and just stood in front of the computer until it hit 9 o'clock. Phone's ringing? Too bad. My shift hasn't started. Deliveries need to go out? Sorry, I'm not on the clock yet. I clocked in at 9 o'clock and then clocked out at 5:30. Same conversation as the day before about who was going to help him close. The third morning I walk in and he waits for me to clock in, then pulls me aside to talk to me. Manager, I think we can overlook a few minutes in the morning if you stay and help me close. Me, oh, interesting. I thought I was just supposed to work my schedule. Manager, yeah, well, I guess we can overlook that. I had very few problems with this manager after that little exchange. I would, however, like to clarify that this was by no means my finest moment in terms of being a well-adjusted adult. Was I in fact late? Yes. Was my response petty? Yes. Would I handle it the same way now over a decade later? Hopefully and most likely not, but that isn't the name of the game in this sub, because this is malicious compliance, not I did the right thing. I agree being late is bad, and it's something I strive not to be, but things happen, not to mention the assumption, yeah, I know what it means, that stay 1.5 hours extra the night before ought to buy you some slack. It's bad enough that managers do not notice how hard you try and stay until the end of the shift, while it is against the rules of the store. I think your manager learned that lesson when you refused to stay after your shift and didn't help him. Sometimes managers start taking advantage of their power and think that their subordinates are puppets who will do anything stupid in their whims. I had exactly the same problem when I worked in an auto parts store. I always helped the manager and stayed after my shift, but one day I was late because my bus was delayed due to a breakdown. The store manager was on shift that day. He got very angry with me and reprimanded me. Employees have to work according to the schedule. I agreed and stopped doing extra work. A week later, the work I was doing was not done, and the director asked me why I did not do it. I replied that the workers have to work according to the schedule, so no extra work. He then apologized and gave me a conciliation bonus. Such problems never happened again. The next story is, got asked to step down from a position. Years ago, I taught Sunday school on a voluntary basis at a megachurch in my town. There were so many children in this church that classrooms were made available to group children with Sunday school teachers for every year of their life, until middle school and high school, at which point they attended a larger group, with similarly aged peers in separate wings of the building. I taught 2-year-olds and loved every moment of it. My classroom boasted a huge number of children, at about 20 to 25 per service. I was supposed to have an adult co-teacher, but all the other adult volunteers were sent to other classrooms with a higher need. I had 2 high school-age volunteers, best friends, who often spent service time playing together, despite repeated approaches asking them to play with the children. One of my volunteers was the director's son, who I couldn't replace because of his mother, and who clearly did not want to be volunteering. Despite this, and despite inheriting a huge classroom full of several special needs children, my children played calmly throughout service, and enjoyed a routine and simple rules I set to run the classroom efficiently. Children arrived, played calmly, sang songs, ate snacks, and went home. Even in the face of this obvious evidence that my classroom was running efficiently, I was repeatedly asked by church leaders to adopt certain mannerisms around children I found inauthentic and frankly patronizing. I don't and won't speak in a high-pitched voice to anyone, child or adult. I don't and won't use words like oopsie daisy. These requests were persistent. It was the opinion of the church that I was not warm and welcoming enough. It was modeled again and again that the church would prefer I was overanimated, and a huge smile hug I'm so glad you're here kind of greeting. One summer day we were all called, some 50-plus room leaders and volunteers, into a mandatory meeting. You know those meetings where you instantly know they're talking about you? The policies on words like oopsie daisy were now set in writing, and I was shortly asked to step down for not using these phrases. I was not allowed to prepare my children for the transition to a new Sunday teacher. I was immediately replaced, by a friend actually, and was fairly crushed about the sudden break from little people I like spending time with. And furthermore, it made me question my abilities to work with children, an endeavor I had already devoted my life to. Unbeknownst to my church, I had long been working at a career in early childhood intervention, teaching a classroom full of 2-year-old child victims of trauma and abuse with a heavy caseload of special needs children. My coworker called me over one Monday, as I was the 2's teacher, asking what I made of this email she had just received, concerning a church with an out-of-control 2's room, requesting that someone come consult with their new staff and help implement some new classroom techniques to manage difficult behaviors. Naturally, I agreed to do the consult in person as soon as possible, and asked my coworker to let them know I would meet with them on a completely voluntary basis at their next Sunday service. It was absolutely my pleasure to greet my church leaders and friend as their specialist consultant, to their confused surprise. I walked them through all sorts of interventions and strategies I had previously used to create a calm classroom environment, and strongly advised against the use of overly excited greetings and phrases like oopsie daisy, in place of direct redirective requests, e.g. please put your feet back on the floor. It was my strong written recommendation that the written policies on these strategies be amended, and for the staff to be immediately retrained, in accordance with actual therapeutic practices. They changed the policy and asked me to return to work, but I refused. It was my last time stepping foot in that church, and will forever remain my most deliciously cherished memory as a vindication. Edit. One of the 2 leaders of the child care division was a retired teacher for a very young age group. She talked to me in a sing-song voice all the time, and it really drove me nuts. For some people, that's how they relate to everyone. Her folly was in not valuing how different people relate differently to both kids and adults. On an absolutely evil note, it did feel really good to see her frown all through the consult though. Great story, OP. Your organization has lost a very valuable employee. The fact that they asked you to come back proves this. Apparently they needed people like you, but they wanted to show they were smarter and add such silly changes to the policy. I really can't understand why you have to use some stupid words and smile. You have to be sincere because kids see it. If you were good at communicating with kids, why add new rules? I was an art teacher for a short time. I've never spoken to children in a childlike way, and when I teach something I say it in a voice that sounds like the truth, instead of the annoying condescending voice that many other teachers usually use. They may be children, but they're still human and deserve respect. I'm really curious to know how to manage such a large group of children so calmly and effectively. There weren't a lot of children in my group. Could you share your knowledge with those of us who work with children? I would love to have the skills that you have. The last story is, you won't let me have a company phone. I can play this game. The post earlier with the OP working at the hotel where they couldn't use their cell phones at the front desk anymore reminded me of some great MC about 6 to 7 years ago. I worked as a salaried supervisor at a company for 9 years. I was using my own phone out in the field and to get a hold of my independent contractors. About 4 to 5 years in, I had a breakup, and my ex deactivated my phone in spite, so I lost my number. With me being the lead, chairman of the safety committee, and a few other extra tasks I did for the company, I asked for a company phone because I was already using mine for work. I might as well have them pay for the phone in the plan. They told me no, and the reason they stated it's because I have office assistants to take messages, and nothing was too time sensitive. So I took that as a slap in the face. So I got a new phone myself, and I only gave it to my immediate boss and told him that the only reason he is to call me on my off day is if I'm needed to come in if someone didn't show. Otherwise, all the texts will be ignored, and I will not be forwarding my work email to my phone anymore. If I was out in the field and they needed me to go take care of something, shucks, I have to drive all the way back to the office to go back out again when I was less than a mile away. Thanks for the millage and enjoying the extended break. Edit. The millage every week that was added to my expense report was more than what they would pay for my company line per month. Need me to respond to an email ASAP? Sorry, I'll have to do that when I have time to be in the office. Independent contractor needs to get a hold of me ASAP for an issue? Well, just gonna have the secretary take the message, and I'll get to it as soon as possible. About 2 weeks after this, my boss was feeling the pushback from every angle and tried to write me up. Tried to claim I was wasting company time and money because of the mileage and the extra hours out in the field, where I should be at the office getting stuff done. I told him why I was doing that, and he wasn't having any of it. He said I set a standard that was expected of me since I used my personal phone for years before. I told him that's BS. Having a cell phone wasn't a requirement to have the job. My coworker who worked there for 20 years only had landlines, and that since it's my phone, I could do whatever the hell I wanted with it, and that included not using it for work. I took that write-up, the email the boss sent me stating why I was not approved to have a company phone, and sent it to HR. They were livid and went into CYA mode. My boss got written up for writing me up and mine was dismissed. HR even asked the higher-ups and said I was welcome to a company phone. I declined, told them since it's not a requirement to have a cell phone to do my job, I will not be using one. A few of the other supervisors followed suit and refused to use their personal cell phones for work as well anymore. My boss was overall a great boss and let me learn from my own mistakes, but I made sure he learned from his as well. Apparently, your boss wanted to play I Have the Power games. I think giving you the phone was much cheaper for the company. You were wasting your time getting to the office, but it turned out to be a good thing for you. A paid break while you're there is a clever way of explaining your position. I was an assistant to the boss, and I took a lot of his calls and made a lot of work-related calls. It wasn't part of my job description, but I did it to show that I was a good worker. My phone was used for this, and at the end of the month I got my bill, and I showed him all the calls and expenses, and asked for compensation or the company phone number. He refused to do that, so I changed the message to include his cell phone and home number, in case of problems after hours. As far as I know, it annoyed him, but there was nothing he could do because he didn't know how to change it. From then on, the calls just went to voicemail, and he would check them whenever he wanted. So, never. Subscribe, hit the like button, and have a good day.